My mom said no to watching my sick son because she didn't want to give up her weekend plans. I ended up missing a crucial job interview, one that could have changed everything for us. And when I finally drew a line and said I couldn't keep helping them, they turned around and asked me for money. Today, they're standing at my door claiming they've got nowhere else to go. I always knew my mom could be cold. But yesterday, I learned how far that coldness really goes. I'm 31, a single mom to Gregory. We've been on our own since he was 2. His dad moved across the country chasing a fresh start and only reaches out twice a year, with a $20 bill tucked into a birthday card, if he remembers at all. I've been holding down an administrative job for the past 4 years. It pays just enough to keep the lights on, but barely. Between rent, childcare, and Gregory's asthma treatments, it's a non-stop balancing act. For the last 6 months, I've been grinding hard, picking up extra shifts, staying late, volunteering for every project thrown my way, all for a shot at a promotion to executive assistant. It wasn't just a title, it would have meant a real raise. Nothing extravagant, but enough to stop stressing over groceries and maybe, finally, breathe a little. My boss, Andrew, had been hinting I was the top candidate and set my final interview for Friday at 2 p.m. I had it all lined up. Gregory would be at school, I'd step out for a long lunch, nail the interview, and be back before anyone missed me. But Wednesday night, Gregory started that cough. Not the mild one, the deep, barky one that always signals trouble. By Thursday morning, he had a 101.3 fever. No way he could go to school. I called in sick and took him to the pediatrician. We left with a prescription, strict orders for rest, and a clock ticking toward Friday. That's when I made what I thought was a safe call. I phoned my mom. She lives just 25 minutes away. She doesn't work. My dad's semi-retired. They go out to dinner, take weekend trips to their lake house. They're not struggling. Sure, they've never been particularly warm, but in real emergencies, they've helped before. So I explained the situation and asked if she could watch Gregory for just 2 hours on Friday afternoon. She paused, long enough that I already felt the answer coming, and then said, "Oh, honey, this weekend's really not good. We've got the Williams anniversary party on Saturday, and I'm getting my hair done Friday. You know how these things go." I reminded her that this promotion would directly benefit Gregory, her grandson. I wasn't asking for the whole weekend, just 2 hours. Still, she gave that long, dramatic sigh I've heard my whole life and said she couldn't rearrange everything last minute. Then she hit me with, "Maybe this is a sign you need to reevaluate your priorities as a mom." I hung up before I said something I'd regret. After that, I called everyone. Friends, neighbors, other parents from Gregory's school. But nobody could help on such short notice. And definitely not with a sick child. I even left a message with HR asking if we could reschedule the interview, but Andrew's calendar was packed. The response came in Friday morning. The interview had to happen that day or not at all. I had to pull out. That afternoon, I sat with Gregory as he dozed between cartoon episodes and coughing fits, trying not to cry every time I thought about what we'd just lost. Around 4 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from my mom. "How did the interview go? Were you able to make it work?" I just stared at the screen. Saturday morning, another message. "We're heading to the Williams party. Come by for dinner tomorrow. I'm making pot roast." Like nothing had happened. Sunday, while Gregory watched TV, I called her. I told her we weren't coming for dinner, that I was hurt, that I'd needed her, and she chose a party over helping her own family. Her response? "You can't expect me to drop everything every time you have a crisis. I raised you. Raising Gregory is your job now." The conversation spiraled fast. I reminded her that I'd only asked for help maybe 5 times in the last 4 years. She countered by listing every birthday and Christmas gift they'd ever given Gregory, as if gifts could replace real support. When I brought up the countless ways I'd helped them over the years, setting up their smart TV, driving my dad to physical therapy after his knee surgery, hauling furniture during their redecorating spree, my mom brushed it all off like it was just normal family stuff. By the end of the call, I was shaking. I told her I needed some space. That maybe it was time I stopped putting everything on hold for people who never seemed to show up for me or Gregory. That's when she went quiet. And then, as if we hadn't just had an incredibly tense conversation, she said, "We were hoping you could help us out with some bills this month. Your father's medication went up and property taxes are due." I couldn't believe it. The same call where she ignored how her actions had hurt me. She was now asking for money I no longer had, all because I missed an interview she could have helped me get to. I told her I wasn't in a position to offer financial support, not after the opportunity I'd just lost. She mumbled something about how families should support one another and hung up. The irony was almost laughable. Monday morning, the email came. The job had gone to someone else. Someone who actually made it to the interview. I spent my lunch break crying alone in my car, then went back to my desk like everything was fine. That evening, my dad called. First came small talk, then a clumsy segue. "Your mom told me about your conversation." He tried to smooth it over, saying she didn't mean to come across as unsupportive, but they really needed help covering some bills this month. When I reminded him about the missed promotion, he said, "These things happen. There'll be other chances." It's been 3 days now. Gregory's finally back at school, healthy and cheerful. I'm back at my desk, watching the person who got the job I'd worked so hard for settling into my new role. My parents, they've called and texted nonstop. Not to apologize, but to ask when I'll be sending money. That's when I hit my limit. After years of one-sided effort, I finally set a boundary. I sent a message saying I wouldn't be helping financially or otherwise for the foreseeable future, and I needed that to be respected. Their reply? "We're family. Family helps each other." Yes, but apparently that only applies when they need something from me. Now I'm sitting with this mix of guilt and relief. Gregory keeps asking when we're going to visit Grandma and Grandpa. And honestly, I don't know what to say. For those wondering why I didn't just bring Gregory to the interview, he was truly sick. Fever, nonstop coughing. He couldn't be left alone, and showing up to a professional interview with a sick 6-year-old simply wasn't possible. Update. 2 weeks later. Things have taken a turn I didn't expect, though I probably should have. After I told my parents I couldn't support them financially anymore, they went completely silent for 3 days. For a brief moment, I wondered if they were actually reflecting, maybe even respecting my boundary. That illusion vanished Tuesday evening. Gregory and I were making dinner, just boxed mac and cheese with hot dogs, his favorite, when my phone buzzed. I figured it was Juliet from next door. Instead, it was my mom. No greeting, no context, just a screenshot of a credit card bill, $4,378.62. 20 minutes later, another text. "We need help with this by Friday or they'll raise the interest rate." As I stirred the mac and cheese, memories started flooding in. The Christmas they couldn't afford gifts, but still went skiing for the weekend. The emergency car repair last summer that turned out to be an upgraded sound system. Each time they'd insisted it was urgent. Each time I'd scraped from my savings to bail them out. I put my phone down and focused on Gregory. He was telling me about a solar system project at school, how he got assigned to be Jupiter because it has the most moons. He was so excited. I didn't want to cloud his world with all this. Later that night, I checked my phone again. 3 missed calls. 1 voicemail from my dad. "Call us back. This is important. Your mother is very upset." I didn't call back. I sent 1 message. "I've already said I can't help financially right now, especially after everything that's happened." Then I put my phone on silent and spent the next hour applying for new jobs. The missed promotion had been a wake-up call. 4 years of loyalty to a company that replaced me in a heartbeat. It's time I start prioritizing us. The next morning, I woke up to a wall of texts from my mother. She said the debt on the credit card was mostly from helping me and Gregory. That was news to me. While waiting for my coffee to finish brewing, I scrolled through the past year's bank statements, and the contrast was staggering. My parents had given Gregory a $30 Target gift card for his birthday, handed down a few outgrown clothes from my cousin's kid that didn't even fit, and once took us to Applebee's using a buy one get one coupon, which they reminded me of at least 3 times. Meanwhile, I'd given them $800 when their water heater broke, spent over $200 on a birthday gift from my dad, and lost count of the hours I spent setting up their devices, fixing tech issues, and driving them to appointments when night driving became hard for my dad after cataract surgery. That morning, I dropped Gregory off at school and went to work, where I had the lovely task of training Ronnie on the very position that was supposed to be mine. He was visibly uncomfortable and kept making comments like, "You really had this nailed," and "They probably should have waited for your interview." It was awkward, but not his fault. During lunch, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Hoping it might be about a job application, I answered. Instead, it was my Aunt Isla, my mom's sister, who I usually only hear from at Christmas and maybe Easter. She launched into a speech about how concerned she was for my parents and how, even though I might be going through a rough patch emotionally, family needs to stick together. That's when I realized my parents had started calling relatives and spinning a story. one where they were the selfless abandoned victims and I was the ungrateful dramatic daughter. When I tried explaining what actually happened, the interview, the history, the imbalance, she cut me off with, "Well, that's your perspective. Your mom says she's always been there for you." After the call, I did something I'd never done before. I Googled how to tell if your parents are manipulative. I spent the rest of my lunch break reading articles that felt uncomfortably familiar. Every paragraph described the patterns I'd grown up with. That gut punch realization that this wasn't normal hit me hard. I cried in the bathroom for 5 minutes before pasting on my best "I'm fine" smile and getting back to work. That evening, Gregory and I were at the park when my dad's SUV pulled into the lot. Gregory spotted him right away and ran over, all smiles. My stomach twisted. I hadn't prepared for this, especially not with Gregory there. My dad gave him a big hug, then asked if we could talk, just for a minute. I sent Gregory back to the swings and crossed my arms. My dad looked tired, and for a moment, that familiar reflex of guilt crept in. Then he started talking. He said my mom had been crying herself to sleep because I'd cut them off. Then, almost casually, added that their homeowner's insurance premium was due next week. I interrupted. I asked how he had no problem driving 25 minutes to the playground to guilt-trip me in person. But somehow they couldn't make that same trip to help when Gregory was sick. He looked genuinely shocked, like the thought had never crossed his mind. We talked for about 10 minutes. He alternated between soft guilt and direct money talk. When I finally said, "I need to get Gregory home for dinner," he visibly relaxed. Because to him, "I'll think about it" had always meant, "Yes, I'll help." It had always played out that way before, but not this time. Over the weekend, my brother Damien called. We usually just text, so this was out of the ordinary. Turns out he'd gotten the same guilt-laced phone calls I had, but unlike our aunt, he saw right through it. "They pulled the same stunt on me last year," he said. "Claimed it was a plumbing emergency. A week later, Mom posted about their new patio set on Facebook. It was oddly comforting to know I wasn't imagining this, that someone else saw it too." We agreed to keep each other in the loop about any future emergencies. Monday brought a sliver of hope, a message from a company I'd applied to. They wanted to interview me for a similar role but with better pay and benefits. I scheduled it for the following week, giving myself enough time to arrange childcare, this time with Juliet, our amazing neighbor who'd offered to help after everything with my parents. That afternoon, my mom texted again, "We're very disappointed in your attitude. Your father and I have always supported you, and this is how you repay us. We need to talk about the credit card bill." I didn't reply, but I did check Facebook. There they were, at a fancy restaurant over the weekend. My mom smiling next to a group of friends, wearing what she called her birthday splurge dress. The caption? "Feeling fabulous." Tuesday night, Gregory was asleep, and I was folding laundry when someone knocked on the door. It was nearly 9 p.m. I looked through the peephole. My mother. She stood there looking, somehow, both furious and pitiful at the same time. I opened the door but didn't invite her in, and without missing a beat, she launched into a speech about family, about obligation, about how they were under serious financial strain because of unexpected expenses. Again. When I calmly asked my mom what these unexpected expenses actually were, she got vague. She mentioned medical bills, even though both of them are on Medicare, and house repairs, despite the fact that their home is newer than my apartment building. Then came the inflation excuse, a general cost of living increase. I didn't take the bait. I simply said, again, that I couldn't help them financially right now. That's when she changed tactics. "Well, could you at least look over our finances? You're so good with budgeting." Translation. She wanted me to see their money problems, feel guilty, and offer to fix it. Probably with my own bank account. I suggested they speak to a financial advisor at their bank or maybe reach out to a credit counseling service. Her face instantly changed. She stiffened and said something that has haunted me since. "I don't think you understand. We're your parents. We took care of you for 18 years. Now it's your turn to take care of us." I told her I had to check on Gregory and close the door. Through the window, I watched her just stand there for nearly a full minute before walking back to the car, where my dad sat waiting in the passenger seat. The next day, I got a group text from my mom. It was addressed to me, my brother Damien, and a few other family members. Attached was a link to a GoFundMe titled, "Help 2 seniors stay in their home." The description was vague, hinting at medical issues and financial hardship, but offering no specifics. The goal, $155,000. No donations yet, Damien called me immediately. We were both stunned. Our parents own their house. It was paid off years ago. They receive retirement income from my dad's pension and Social Security. They are not in danger of losing their home. This was manipulation at a whole new level. Neither of us replied to the group chat. But our aunt already messaged me privately asking why I refused to step up for our parents, given everything they've done for me. I'm still processing all of it, while also trying to prepare for a job interview next week. Gregory keeps asking when we're going to visit Grandma and Grandpa, and I'm running out of excuses. A part of me feels heartless, but another part, the louder part, feels like I'm finally standing up for myself. Then, this morning, I received an email from my dad. Subject line: urgent, please read, body. We need to talk face to face. It's about the house. I haven't answered yet. I'm trying to stay firm on my boundaries. That interview next week feels like the first clean break in years, a real chance to move forward without constantly being drained by people who never show up when I need support. Has anyone else dealt with this kind of pressure after setting boundaries with family? How do you protect your peace without burning bridges for the sake of your kid? Edit. Clarification. No, I don't believe they're truly at risk of losing their house. And as for Gregory's father, he pays the bare minimum in court-ordered support, which barely covers asthma meds. Second update. 3 weeks later, it's 1 a.m., and I can't sleep, so I'm typing this on my phone. After my dad's email, I agreed to meet them, but not at my apartment. I suggested the Starbucks near Gregory's school. Public place, neutral ground. They arrived 15 minutes late. Typical. My mom was wearing designer sunglasses and the Coach purse I got her for her birthday last year. My dad showed up in a golf shirt, despite the chilly weather. Neither of them looked like people on the verge of financial ruin. They sat down and immediately started talking over each other about how their mortgage company was harassing them. I interrupted. You've always said your house was paid off? Long pause. Then my mom admitted they had taken out a home equity line of credit 3 years ago. They'd used it to renovate the kitchen, take a cruise to Alaska, and cover other expenses. Translation: luxury, not emergencies. They'd been making minimum payments, barely covering the interest, and now the bank was finally pushing them to pay on time. They weren't about to lose the house. They just had to start being responsible. I felt a strange mix of relief and deep frustration. They had lied. Again. I asked about the GoFundMe. My mom waved it off. It's just in case things get worse. I told them, as clearly as I could, I can't help financially. Not now. Not after everything. I recommended speaking to a financial advisor or setting up a payment plan with their bank. My dad started pushing back. But this time, I didn't bend. The conversation ended with my mom sniffling into a napkin and my dad silently staring into his untouched coffee. I walked out of that Starbucks emotionally drained, but oddly lighter. I picked up Gregory from his sleepover, and he was bursting with excitement about the games they'd played and the snacks they'd had. We spent the rest of the weekend doing homework, watching movies, and for once, I tried to leave my parents completely out of my mind. My focus shifted to something that actually mattered, my job interview. And surprisingly, it went really well. It was with a smaller company, but the pay was better, the benefits were stronger, and the manager, Douglas, seemed genuinely interested in my experience. I didn't get into the drama, just mentioned I was a single parent, and he immediately told me they had a work-from-home option for when kids are sick. It felt like someone was finally listening. I didn't want to get my hopes up, but it felt like the kind of job that could change everything. Then, last Tuesday, while Gregory and I were making dinner and painting his papier-mâché Jupiter model at the kitchen table, newspaper, glue, and paint everywhere, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Aunt Isa. She had sent me a screenshot of a Facebook post from my mom. Sometimes the hardest part of being a parent is watching your child make poor decisions. Praying for guidance during this difficult time. The comments were full of vague sympathy, and my mom was replying with even vaguer responses about financial strain and being abandoned by ungrateful children. Aunt Isa's message underneath said, "What's going on? Your mom is posting some concerning stuff." I didn't answer right away. Gregory and I finished Jupiter, cleaned up the kitchen, and did our bedtime routine. Once he was asleep, I tried to draft a reply, but deleted each one. How do you explain years of emotional manipulation and one-sided support in a single text? Instead, I messaged my brother Damien. He said he'd already seen the post and had even commented on it. But his comment, surprise, surprise, had mysteriously disappeared an hour later. The next night, It finally happened. Douglas called. He offered me the job. Start date in 3 weeks. Enough time to give notice. Salary? $2,000 more than the promotion I never got. And that flexibility I desperately needed for Gregory. I accepted on the spot. The wave of relief that hit me was instant. This was our reset, our clean slate. I picked up Gregory and we celebrated with ice cream. He was all smiles. Then my phone rang again. An unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. It was the manager from our apartment complex, asking if my parents had permission to enter my unit. Apparently, they'd shown up claiming they forgot their key and needed to drop off something for Gregory. Only, they never had a key. My stomach dropped. I told her absolutely not, thanked her for checking, and hung up. Then I rushed Gregory through the rest of his ice cream and drove home, heart pounding the whole way. When we pulled into the parking lot, their SUV was still there, parked in a visitor's spot. I told Gregory to stay in the car and lock the doors, something I've never had to say to him before. Then I headed straight for the manager's office. Ariana, the manager, looked visibly relieved. She explained my parents had been insistent about getting into the apartment, saying they left medicine for Gregory. When she refused to let them in, they just sat in the lobby for 2 hours, waiting. I braced myself and walked into the lobby. There they were, sitting with a small suitcase and my mom's giant handbag. They looked up, and instantly my mom started crying. My dad stood up and launched into his explanation. A misunderstanding with the mortgage company, a utility shut-off due to clerical errors. They just needed a place to stay, just for a few nights. But I knew better. They weren't planning to ask. They were planning to be inside before I got home, to make it harder for me to say no. I asked why they hadn't called first. My dad claimed their phones were about to be disconnected, so they came in person. Yet somehow still managed to drive across town and sit here for hours. I told them gently but firmly, they couldn't stay with me. My apartment has 1 bedroom which I share with Gregory and a small pull-out couch in the living room. But even more than that, after everything that had happened, I simply wasn't comfortable letting them stay. I suggested they stay at a hotel. They still had that credit card. Or with Aunt Isa, who had a guest room and lived closer to them anyway. That's when my mom's tears turned to anger. She accused me of abandoning them. My dad started listing all the things they'd done for me growing up. Buying clothes, paying for doctor visits, packing my lunches. Like raising your own child is some kind of lifelong debt they can call in at any time. And that's when I realized they weren't here for help. They were here for control. Basic parenting responsibilities, food, doctor visits, school lunches, all now being presented like some grand act of charity. Gregory was still waiting in the car, so I kept it brief. I told them clearly and calmly that while I'd help them find other options, they could not stay with me. My mom grabbed her bag and stormed out without another word. My dad lingered a moment longer, looking genuinely confused, like he truly couldn't understand why, for the first time ever, I wasn't folding. For the next hour, I was on the phone, calling Aunt Isa, who reluctantly agreed to let them stay a few days, calling my brother Damien, who offered to come over if I needed backup, and finally leaving a voicemail for my parents with Isa's address. Meanwhile, I did my best to keep things normal for Gregory, who could tell something was off but didn't know why. The next morning, I got a short text from my dad. "We're at Isa's. We'll figure it out." I went to work, handed in my notice, and tried to focus on the future, on the new job, the stability, the boundaries I was finally keeping. When I picked up Gregory from school, he asked if Grandma and Grandpa were okay. I kept it simple. They were having some trouble with their house but were staying with Aunt Isa. That seemed to satisfy him. But by Friday afternoon, just as I was finishing paperwork, my phone buzzed with a notification from our apartment's resident portal. Someone had submitted a request to be added to my approved visitor list. It was my parents. I declined it immediately and called Ariana, the building manager. She paused, then admitted something that sent chills down my spine. My mom had already been by earlier that day, insisting she needed to drop off important medication for Gregory. When Ariana reminded her that I'd denied them access, my mother got loud, arguing that as Gregory's grandmother, she had rights. Ariana held her ground but warned me that my mom said she'd be coming back Saturday, when she knew we'd be home. I spent the rest of the day distracted, running through every possible scenario. That night, after picking up Gregory, I double-checked every lock, closed every blind, and ordered pizza. I suggested we build a blanket fort and watch a movie. Something fun, something safe. Gregory picked How to Train Your Dragon. We were halfway through the movie. Popcorn everywhere, Gregory giggling from inside the blanket cave. When there was a knock at the door, I didn't even have to check. I knew. I told Gregory to stay in the fort and keep watching. Then I opened the door just wide enough to step outside. And sure enough, there they were. Same suitcase as before, plus 2 more bags. My dad smiled like this was all perfectly normal. "We figured your place made more sense than Isa's," he said. "More space, closer to the doctor." None of that was true. My mom peered past me, calling Gregory's name. He perked up inside the fort at the sound of her voice. I stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind me, and told them, again, that they could not stay with me. Not now. Not for the weekend. Not just until things get sorted. My mom's face shifted. Her voice turned cold. "We'll see what the police have to say about a daughter turning away her elderly parents with nowhere to go." It was so absurd I almost laughed. I stayed calm, explained that they were not homeless. They had a car, an active credit card, and relatives willing to house them. If they called the police, they'd be directed to social services, or right back to Aunt Isa's guest room. My dad quickly pivoted, trying a new tactic. He mentioned Gregory's birthday next month. "Wouldn't it be sad," he said, "if we couldn't bring gifts? Because we were living in our car?" The guilt was so forced it made my skin crawl. I told them I was blocking their numbers for now and suggested they head back to Isa's or check into a hotel. Then I turned and went inside, hands shaking, and locked the door. Gregory looked up. "Are Grandma and Grandpa coming in?" I smiled and said, "They just stopped by to say hello. They had to go back to Aunt Isa's." He nodded and returned to the movie, but I didn't. Every sound from the hallway made me flinch. They knocked twice more before finally leaving. I checked the peephole each time, but didn't open the door. At 10 p.m., after Gregory was asleep, my phone lit up with a stream of messages. Guilt trips. "I guess 30 years of parenting means nothing to you." Anger. "You'll regret this when we're gone." And outright manipulation. "We're officially homeless. This is on you." I didn't reply. I texted Aunt Isa, who confirmed they'd returned, loudly complaining about my cruelty, but settling into her guest room nonetheless. This morning I woke up to an email from my dad. Subject, "Your debt attached" was a spreadsheet. A detailed list of everything they'd spent on me since birth. Food, clothes, school supplies, doctor visits, each with a dollar amount. At the bottom, a total. An amount he claimed I now owed them. And that was the moment I knew. This wasn't about love. This was about control. My dad's spreadsheet had a dollar sign next to nearly every childhood memory, even my birth, but I didn't respond. Instead, I took Gregory to the park, helped him with his homework, and focused on our future. I was trying to enjoy the momentum of my new job, even as I kept looking over my shoulder, wondering what my parents might try next. After all, they'd never taken no for an answer before. Edit. A few people asked if I could crash with friends temporarily. But this is Gregory's school zone. This is our home. I wasn't about to let them drive us out of it. Edit 2. To those suggesting I involve adult protective services, my parents are in their early 60s, fully mobile, mentally sharp, and have financial resources. This isn't about vulnerability. It's about manipulation. They've made it a tactic, not a necessity. Last update. I wasn't sure I'd ever write again, but something happened yesterday that I'm still trying to process. And writing helps. Plus, so many of you have followed this journey. I felt I owed you the final chapter. It's been just over 6 months since that night. The night they stood at my door with suitcases, claiming they were homeless. A lot has changed since then. Mostly for the better. I've now been at my new job for 5 months. And the flexibility they promised? It's real. When Gregory had a bad asthma flare-up last month, I stayed home for 3 days. No guilt, no stress, just support. We're not suddenly rich, but I don't wake up at 3 a.m. panicking about whether I can afford both school supplies and the electric bill. We moved about 7 weeks ago, just a small 2-bedroom place in the same school district. But now Gregory has his own room. The look on his face when we went furniture shopping, when I told him he could pick out his own bedspread, was unforgettable. He chose planets. Our new fridge works. The shower actually has water pressure. These tiny upgrades feel massive after years of making do. As for my parents, that's where it gets complicated. After the night they tried to move in uninvited, I didn't hear from them for nearly 3 weeks. Instead, they launched what my brother Damien now calls the family PR campaign. Aunt Isa, cousins, even my dad's bowling buddy messaged me, all with the same script. They're struggling. Families should stick together. But this time, I didn't cave. I started therapy about a month later. It's covered by my new insurance, and honestly, it's been life-changing. My therapist helped me recognize lifelong patterns I'd never seen before, how I was conditioned to feel responsible for their emotions, their finances, their entire world. In our family, no was never treated like a full sentence. And guilt? Guilt was the currency they used to buy control. I started documenting everything: texts, emails, voicemails. It paid off. Because in late March, something happened that made everything very real. My parents showed up at Gregory's school, claiming they were authorized to pick him up for a doctor's appointment. Thankfully, the front office called to confirm. I dropped everything and drove straight there. They were in the parking lot, waiting. I confronted them. My mom said they just wanted a little time with their grandson. That was it. I took all the evidence to the school administration, who immediately updated their security protocols. Then I did something I never imagined I'd have to do. I sent a certified letter to my parents. It stated, clearly, that any future attempts to contact Gregory directly without my permission would lead to legal action. Writing it made my hands shake. But I knew it had to be done. Since then, they've stayed away, at least physically. Emotionally? Gregory still struggles. He misses them. He doesn't understand the full picture, and I don't want him to. I've explained things in age-appropriate ways, telling him that sometimes people we love make unhealthy choices, and that it's okay to love someone and still need distance. I don't know how much of it sinks in, but he seems to be adjusting. Damien and I, we've grown closer through all this. We were never tight. He's 5 years older, moved across the state years ago, but dealing with our parents has brought us together. He visits about once a month now. Gregory adores him, calls him the comic book uncle. Then, last month, I found out through the grapevine that my parents had actually fallen behind on their mortgage. But it wasn't because they were broke. They were spending freely, on credit cards, assuming they'd catch up later. My aunt, who's now surprisingly supportive after seeing the full truth, told me they worked out a payment plan. They're no longer at risk of foreclosure. Turns out, they never were. It was manipulation, plain and calculated. And perhaps the most bitter part? My aunt let slip that when I got the new job. Instead of giving them money, my mom lost it. Apparently, she'd been counting on my guilt as part of their financial plan. And when I stopped giving in, she had to recalculate. I wish I could say I've processed all of this with perfect clarity, that I've risen above it all, graceful and serene. But the truth? Some days I still cry. Some nights I still double-check the locks. And sometimes I wonder how we got here. How a daughter setting a boundary could feel like betrayal. But then I see Gregory, sleeping peacefully in the room he picked himself, Jupiter bedspread and all. And I remind myself, breaking the cycle isn't betrayal, it's protection. And for the first time in a long time, I feel free. It's true. There have been nights when I cried after putting Gregory to bed, wondering if I made the right choice. Days when I drafted long messages to my parents trying to explain my side, and then deleted them before sending. Moments when I'd catch Gregory doing something funny or sweet and instinctively think, Mom would love this, before remembering where we stand. The hardest parts have been the birthdays, the holidays. Gregory turned 8 last month. We planned a small party at the local bowling alley with a few of his classmates. He asked if Grandma and Grandpa would be there. I told him they wouldn't. His face fell, just for a second, before he switched gears and started talking about the cake. That moment broke me. I did send them photos through Aunt Isa. I'm not trying to erase them from his life, just to protect the parts of it that matter most, until trust can be rebuilt. I'm setting boundaries, not erasing history. Then yesterday morning, something unexpected happened. I was flipping pancakes, our usual Saturday morning tradition, when my phone rang. It was my dad. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me said, pick up. His voice sounded different, quieter, less defensive, less entitled. He asked how we were doing, and for once, he waited for the answer instead of hijacking the conversation. I kept it polite but vague, and then he told me something I never expected to hear. My mom had started seeing a therapist. According to him, after months of failed attempts to guilt me back into their orbit, and a recent health scare involving high blood pressure, her doctor suggested stress management therapy. She's been going for 6 weeks, and apparently her therapist has been helping her see things. My dad said she's beginning to understand how her behavior pushed me away. There was no big apology, no grand gesture, no teary phone call begging for forgiveness, just a conversation. My dad's saying she's working on herself, that they'd like to try and rebuild something, slowly, on whatever terms I felt were safe. I told him I needed time to think. And, another surprise, he said, of course. Before we hung up, he also mentioned they'd set up automatic mortgage payments and were meeting with a financial advisor. Subtle but clear signs that maybe, just maybe, they're trying to take responsibility for the damage they caused. Here's the thing. 6 months of therapy has taught me not to rush toward reconciliation. I've learned how easily old patterns can return when boundaries get blurry. But I've also learned that real change can happen when it's consistent, slow, and not transactional. So for now, I'm taking it step by step. I've suggested we start with occasional emails, updates about Gregory, school photos, milestones. No phone calls, no visits, and absolutely no unsupervised contact with Gregory. To my surprise, my dad agreed to the terms. My therapist says words are easy. Real change takes time, months, even years, of steady, honest behavior. And I'm watching for that, not hoping, not expecting, just watching. Life isn't magically perfect now. Our new apartment has a constant drip in the bathroom that maintenance still hasn't fixed. My car made a noise last week that I'm afraid to investigate. Gregory still has nightmares sometimes and sneaks into my bed at 2 a.m. My new job, while better, has its own chaos and office politics. But under all of that, the ordinary stress, the minor chaos, is something new. A feeling I'm still getting used to. The sense that, for the first time, I'm steering my own life. Not reacting. Not patching holes in someone else's boat. Not running on guilt, just choosing. And it's both terrifying and powerful. As for my parents, I don't know what the future holds. Maybe they're changing. Maybe this is just a more sophisticated mask. Time will tell. But I'm not the same daughter I used to be. I'm not someone who will sacrifice her child's well-being or her own peace just to keep someone else comfortable. And that feels like healing. To everyone who supported me, commented, shared their stories, or simply said, "You're not alone," thank you. You helped more than you know, because sometimes that's all it takes. Just knowing someone else has been there too.